Post-punk Australia was vibrant. It was possible for anybody to get up on stage and to be in a group. Personally, I found myself rebelling against the mainstream music industry. The ability to be able to produce independent records or independent cassettes was exciting, to do things for ourselves as opposed to conforming to the industry standards, which were expensive and exploitive and had nothing to do with the creative spirit whatsoever, as far as I could see. I was interested in music that was emerging from overseas as much as I was music in Australia. We all looked towards the English press magazines like Melody Maker, for example, and I was encouraged to find my way to record stores in Australia, those little independent record stores, and order various records from overseas. I guess I first became interested in German music through the likes of Tangerine Dream and particularly Kraftwerk, sensationally interesting to me. I arrived in Germany in 1992, which was after the wall came down. I was very fortunate in that I met a number of very eccentric and interesting artists right from day one, the first day that I was in Berlin. But it was a different environment from Melbourne, where wherever you went, there would be a guitar in every room and there were musicians all around, and it was a more formalised situation in Berlin, where you would meet at a certain time at a rehearsal room and you would exchange your ideas and you would play your music. It didn't seem to be such of a lounge room culture.
This photograph is the first photo session after Roland joined the Boys Next Door. They were in the middle of recording their first album, Door Door, and if you actually look up in the top, one of the corners of the picture, you can see the photograph that later became the cover of that album when they completed it. And about halfway through the process of them recording that album, Roland joined the Boys Next Door, and then soon after that they became the Birthday Party, and then soon after that they left and went to London and then ended up in Berlin. This photograph was taken in the central business district of Melbourne, and it records a chance meeting between subculture of the early days of punk in Melbourne. From left to right, it's Roland S. Howard, Nick Cave, Ollie Olsen, Megan Bannister, Anita Lane and Bronwyn Adams. And just about the time that some of these photographs were taken was the time when we started to become aware of what was going on in Europe. Then, of course, most of the people in these photographs ended up living in Berlin. Many of them stayed on for years afterwards.
I considered I was really lucky to meet Nick Cave when he was a very young musician. He was in the process of dropping out from Goethe Institut, where he was studying painting. I was in the process of walking into my first tertiary teaching job, but he asked me to come and see his band, and that opened up the whole Melbourne music scene at the time. I had been doing portraits. I'd done a lot of portraits of my family, horses, cats, dogs. It was part of my work. And so I wanted to integrate this whole new scene that was happening into that. So that's how the portraits came about. There just seemed to be a whole lot of young or youngish people who wanted to live a bohemian life, you could say. And they certainly didn't want to reinforce the lifestyle that they had been brought up in, which was suburban. So there was a definite scathing attitude to people who saved money, bought a block of land, wanted a car. It was an absolute alternative culture. And to live that life it was cheap. It was amazingly cheap. It'll probably never happen again, but beer was cheap, going to a pub to see a band was cheap, an old bomb second-hand car was cheap, everyone dressed from op shops. It was truly an alternative culture.